Welcome, namaste. So being the first time I've been back up here, this year, and actually the first time I've been back among the living for the last few weeks, I thought maybe I'd just do a really quick, brief review of really, I think, the foundation of everything that we ever talk about and everything we ever have talked about in satsang. How's that? The beauty of it is that because we try to talk about it all, it can actually be very brief if it's just distilled down to its elements. So I'm going to make this very brief because I really would much rather engage in dialogue. I want to have plenty of time for that. But I thought it would be kind of nice to start with the simplicity, the basics. So just follow me along, but without like closing your eyes and going into some mystical state somewhere. Just stay present, but also just try to listen as if you're listening sort of to a guided meditation. Do you know the difference? That's a different type of listening. It's not a listening where we listen with our minds exclusively. We're kind of opening up our whole experiential aspect of our being, right? So we're trying to feel what's being said rather than just strictly hear what's being said. That's a difference in it. So we sort of have to open up those feeling centers so you feel it. So really, I think it could be summarized in a really simple way, which would be one eye, one heart, no mind. One eye, one heart, no mind. So it sounds whatever it sounds like. But if you just follow me, if we just take something as simple as I, even if you say to yourself the word in your own mind, I, and just stop with I. Not I am this, or I am that, or I am Richard, or Jane, or Adya, or, right? None of that, but just I. So even when you say to yourself the word I, there's a natural stopping. If you don't even say, I am, because that implies becoming something, but just I. And if you look into this I, which means you let yourself just feel your way into it. It's not anything mystical, but just this very simple, even concept, I. And you just let yourself feel your way into it. You start to see very quickly that this I doesn't have a past. To have a past, it has to be I am or I was. But just I doesn't have a past. It doesn't have a tomorrow. It doesn't have a mind. It doesn't have a body necessarily. It doesn't have a location where you can't say, oh, this I resides here, 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 there. And yet it's very present. If you just say I, it's the most fundamental fact of existence, isn't it? I. Everything in any human being's life has revolved around I. Everything has happened to I. So if we just stay with I, and you look into the I itself, and you see it doesn't have past, a future, it doesn't have a mind, it doesn't have a name, it doesn't have a sex. You can't say there was a time when it came into existence, Can you put your finger on it and say, this is where the I began? It has a timeless quality to it. Right? You can put your finger and say, I was 4 years old, I was 30, I was 50. But just I, see, the same I is consistent throughout. It has a timeless quality to it. So this is one I. And if you look at another quality of this I is always what I like to call awareing. Right? It's conscious. It's just conscious. Which means that it's awake rather than asleep. So if this I has any attribute whatsoever, it's just that it is conscious. It's awake. It knows that it is, in other words. It doesn't know what it is, but it knows that it is. Right? It can investigate itself, like we were just doing. So this quality of awareness, so when I say one I mean the literal I, the statement I, the concept I, without any sense of becoming or being anything, just I. And also the fact that there's one I, it's like it has eyes, right? It has awareness. It has consciousness. So it has an I in that sense. It's always aware. You are always aware. There's no time that you're not aware. Because if you weren't, you wouldn't know. See? You have to know that you're not aware. So one I. So this quality of just awareness. Oftentimes it's called just consciousness, but I think that's a big concept that the mind loves to play with. So if we say awareness, which is what's awareness? It's just seeing. Right? It's just seeing. The one I. When you look into it, it doesn't. What do you see? You don't see anything, do you? Just I. No past, no future, no body, no sex, no name, no birth, no life, no death. Just I. You feel your way into it. So it has a sense of awareness. The other part is one, so this is one I, one heart. This is what a lot of people leave out. Which is, when we can look into the I, we can look from the I, the simplicity of this I, with no qualities except the fact that it can see or be aware or be conscious. But often we leave out the fact of the one heart. Right? To aware is, when you just aware, it's dry. It's dry, isn't it? Kind of. If we leave it right there, just aware. There's no emotion. There's no feeling. There's no sensation. Really, there's nothing. But then, if you aware with the heart, which means that you're now looking, awareing, consciousness-ing, with your whole feeling center. Because after all, there's this beautiful sensory apparatus called the human experience. So what is it like to aware with one's whole experiencing center, right? Feeling center. It's one thing, say, to look at the flower, to just aware it, and it's a whole other thing to look at the flower, not just with awareness, but with heart, with feeling, so you feel it. Right? If you just look at it, it's nothing. It's just sight. Right? It's blank. It's dull. It might be pretty, but to aware with the heart, with all of your intuitive feeling capacity. You see, this is another aspect of I. Right? If we don't cut it off. Is so there's a part of just, we could almost say, see, what I've seen is when the teaching of pure awareness is taught, most people think this pure awareness sort of devoid, you see, of everything human. You see what I mean? Right? And so it becomes something very almost blank. As if You looked out and there was absolute, Wonder Bread behind your eyes. Yes? But that's not actually the case, you see. So, to see how this formless I, this I that doesn't have any attributes, that doesn't have a name or a history, but it also has this capacity to sense. We might even say feel. Right? Feeling is not quite accurate, but it's the best word that I have. It feels existence. It feels itself as nothing. Right? So there's one thing to aware the formless I. It's another thing to sense the formless I. Do you get what I mean? You can't think about it. You just have to you're bringing these two capacities. We could say the spiritual I, right? The formless spiritual I and the spiritual heart together, so that's one experience of being. See, that's being. Just to see is not to be, right? Just to see is not to be. To bring the one I and the one heart together is being. What does formless I feel like? Do you get the difference? Do you feel the difference? Right? It's formless. It doesn't have a feeling that you can put your finger on as a particular emotion, does it? But that doesn't mean it doesn't have a sensing quality, a feeling quality to it. That your own self, your formless self, feels blank and lifeless and devoid. That's not the real self. Right? That's one half. That's the self in the head cut off from the self in the heart. So when we say formless awareness, formless consciousness, we should never forget that one I and one heart sense from the heart as well as from the awakeness together. And then the no mind is easy. Because everything we've just talked about, if you look into the one I, if you just say I, you go back to this beautiful basic of just I. Your mind can't touch it, can it? It can touch I am this and I have been that and I hope to be and I'm good enough or I'm not good enough, but it can't really touch just I. You see it just kind of stops. So that's stopping. It doesn't even mean you're not thinking. No mind does not mean no thought. No mind is to aware, is to intuit this I that's before thought. Even if thought is trying to penetrate it, trying to understand it, trying to wrap it up in a conceptual framework, it can't. Because just this I is always just I. It's never going to be anything more than that. So in one sense, that's almost the whole, I think, of any real spiritual teaching. That's the whole, is to move from I am this, right? I am who I think I am, to just I. That movement, to just I. That's it. So you can throw all your books away. Really, see, because what else are they all telling you, right? You read. They're all saying, go back to I. Or I am, if you prefer, right? Even the Bible. I am that I am. The mind stops there too. So just this very simple thing, from I am this to just I. And to investigate with your awareness and with your heart. So you feel into I and not just think into I. That's the eternal I. That's the I that's outside of time. That nobody owns. I don't own anymore. You have it as much as I have it. Nobody owns that I. You have it as much as Jesus and Ramana and Buddha had it. It's the same I. It's the same thing that's right behind your two eyes. It's the same awareness that's looking out. It's the same awareness that looked out of Buddhas and Ramanas and it's the same consciousness that looked out. It's behind your two eyes, it's behind any other saint or sage that ever lived. It's no different. We just call people, sages or saints when they actually believe it. It's the only difference. They actually believe, oh, I get it. I am that I, instead of I am this and that and all that stuff. I see. And then the last part, the other part of the teaching is also that there is, in this human experience, there is the movement, the momentum of I am this and I am that, right? I am somebody, I have been somebody. The mind arises, emotions arise, situations arise, right? Lots of things arise. Suffering, in other words, conflict, loneliness, despair. Also happiness and joy, and all these emotional experiences come and go. None of them are permanent. Conditioning arises one day and seems to be an absolute disaster that you'll never get out of the grips of, and 1 week later, where did it go? And then you're so sure it's never going to come back, and a week later, there it is again, right? So the second part of the teaching also tries to deal with this element of human existence, where we could call the movement of conditioning, right? Humanness. And we could say the prescription for human suffering. The prescription for identification, the prescription for conditioning, the arising of conditioning, the prescription for suffering is introducing that conditioning, introducing that suffering, introducing that fixation on identity to the experience, not to the concept, but to the experience of just I. Introducing the two. So one comes into the other. See, if you come from conditioning and you're reaching out from some true spiritual state, you ever notice it doesn't work, does it? But if you let the conditioning be what it's going to be, you just leave it alone for a moment and come back to this formless I, just the simplicity of I. And then whatever arises, arises. Because then it's no longer personal. It's not about you. It never was about you. But just because it's not about you doesn't mean it's not going to arise within your experience. So when we realize that it's not about me, that no matter what arises, no matter what emotional experience I have, no matter what confusion or doubt or suffering that I have, it in no way ever defines this I. And all you have to do is check and see for yourself. You have to do the experiment. You have to check and see. Is this I, has it ever been really touched by any of that? Affected? Harmed? Did it ever suffer? Has this formless I ever suffered? See what I mean? So you look into this experientially in yourself. And when so many people, it's very good questions, and this is a big part of satsang too, is people say, well, I keep getting swept away by either conditioning or emotional experiences or some suffering of some sort. What do I do? And the doing is to welcome that conditioning from this I. And let the conditioning meet the purity of this formless I that you really are. Let them meet, let them interact. Don't do anything with it. Because that formless I, you see, has immense intelligence, enough intelligence to create all this. It's pretty wise, right? It's run the universe pretty well for who knows since the beginning of time. So we're introducing those elements, those human elements, letting them arise within this formless I. And when you actually do that, don't identify with them, don't think they're personal, don't think they mean anything about you, but neither push them away and label them as something negative. When they interact with that formless I, there's a transformation that happens. And every human being differs. See, I'd love to come in front of you and I'd love to tell everybody in this room that all you have to do is go to the formless I, right? And then at some point, as you just merge yourself and really investigate the experience of that formless I, and then you suddenly, at some point, nobody knows when, realize that you actually are that formless I, that that's what you always have been, that no conditioning would ever arise, and that's all you got to do. I'd love to be able to tell you that. I imagine some of you have been told that and find out it's not true. But what I have found is that every individual differs. Every single person differs. Nobody differs in their capacity to awaken, that's for sure. I've seen anybody can awaken at any time, and it doesn't matter how big your karmic load is. It just doesn't matter. That's clear. But how much of that conditioning is going to rise up and filter itself through that purity? Everybody is different. You see, some have a very, very, very light karmic load, we could say, and some people have a pretty heavy karmic load. Of course, the formless I was never touched, whether you have heavy or light. That's what you realize. That it doesn't really matter. You see what I mean? But as a human being, one cannot just discount it all. It doesn't work, does it? It doesn't work to avoid it all. One has to be courageous enough to see that from the perspective of I, from the perspective of formless I, that nothing is personal. And then there's no if it's not personal, then there's no self-judgment and there's no guilt. If it's not personal, why judge, why guilt? Why guilt? It just doesn't make sense anymore. In that space, that's the transformative space. That's where whatever arises becomes transformed. And you just watch. You just watch and allow from formless I, you just watch and you can feel and experience this alchemy taking place. You can just watch it and you can experience it and you can see conditioning arise, conditioning touching, interacting with that purity, and conditioning dissolving into it. You can just watch it. You can feel it. You can see it. You see, so you get how simple it all is? I didn't say it's necessarily easy. But it's something that's actually profoundly simple. Profoundly simple. And the secret key, of course there's no secret keys anymore. They've all been let out of the bag. But the secret key has always been, hasn't been a secret actually. The secret has never been a secret that you've needed to learn. The secret has always been a willingness to be simple. That's always been the secret. From time immemorial, that's been the secret. As long as we move into complexity, we get lost, right? As soon as we move into complexity, we get lost. And as soon as you stay in simplicity, which I hope what I've just presented is simple enough, that's the challenge, to stay with simplicity. That's where all the power is. There's all the power and all the juice is in simplicity. As soon as you move into complexity, you take the energy of the self and disperse it in 100 directions. Do you see what I mean? And so it doesn't have that much energy. It doesn't have It's the same sort of transformative energy when we're moving into mental complexity and trying to figure everything out. So this is the beauty and this is the challenge of spirit. This is a form of spiritual inquiry. This is the beauty and the challenge of inquiry, of a profound simplicity and experiencing into that simplicity with awareness, awakeness, and the whole, and experience, right? So one mind, one eye, one heart. Bringing them both together. And most human beings, when you look at yourself, most people find they're a little lopsided. Some people are like, it's beautiful. They're like all heart. They just feel their way into everything. You know what I mean? But they don't got that one pure awareness to give it all clarity, right? To give it all order, so that they're not always taken off by experience. You see, so some people are all feeling, but without the pure consciousness, the pure awakeness of being, they're always, getting lost in experience. And some people are more weighted in just pure awareness. But then they experience life as kind of dull and a little lifeless, and you know what I mean? Not much juice, you see? And if the self is anything, the self has a lot of juice. And it is life itself. That's what it is, life. So it's important to know, it's important to look within your own self and see if and where you might be, you tend to lean too far in one direction, because then you can start to feel your way into the whole. You see, if you're always just feeling your way into everything and you find, I never have any clarity, then you have to go, this I has this crystalline clarity, just awakeness, just consciousness, no feeling, no emotion. So you have to let that into your experience. And if you find that all you really have is crystalline clarity and awakeness, but you're really kind of devoid of feeling, which means you're devoid of the energy of life itself, then you just start to let yourself drop more towards feeling your way. See what I mean? It's very simple. So, why don't we start there? Does anybody have any questions? Yeah. Hi, Ollie. Do you want to come up? Sure. You don't have to, but it's so nice to have someone come into the living room. So much more intimate.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Can I be heard? Is this on?
That doesn't amp.
Oh, that's just okay. So
it's a big living room.
Okay. Hi. Where I went with your talk is that the word that I'm used to using for the formless I is Ramana Maharshi's word, the self. Mm-hmm. That's the. So let me just use that word. Just
if that works, then we'll go with the self.
Capital S. Self.
Okay.
Okay.
The word doesn't matter too much.
What I can see is that the self alone is what is real.
Yes.
And that it's from that point of view, the world is not real. The sense perceptions are not real, except insofar as they're an expression of that self. Mm. That they have no, what can I say, self-reality or self-identity. The only thing that has a self-reality or a self-identity is the self.
Yes, because without the self, without awareness, then everything else would collapse. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So where I go with that is a fundamental realization that who I am is egoless.
Yes.
That there is actually no separate small s self sitting up here at all. That there's all that there is that one self. And so now I guess this is the difficulty at the edge that I'm at, is that it seems that for many decades all my actions have been based on the assumption that the world has some reality, that my goals mean something, that achievements mean something, that even my ethical codes mean something. And what I see happening at the moment is, from this place of no mind, all of that is collapsing. I see that there's nothing I can do, or think that actually is my thoughts, my doing, that it all is that self.
Yes, okay.
So what it's bringing up at this particular moment is a surprising amount of passivity.
Passivity.
Yeah, and it actually has a dual feeling. The first is passivity. Well, it's all the self anyway. And it seems that so much of what I've done is probably, what can I say, was unnecessary, to use your word, didn't have simplicity. So it's like a passivity. Well, before you do anything, let's see if it really does have simplicity. Let's not just do, right? But even more important, it's bringing up, what can I say, a calm and a tranquility.
Calm and tranquility?
Yeah, because it seems that no matter what you do, that self is always the only thing that there is.
That's the self that all doing comes out of, always came out of anyway. Mm-hmm. You see what you see?
Yes,
what I mean?
I do see that.
Even ego, where did it come from?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it has to have come from that self.
That's right.
So would you say that you agree with that perception, that all that we're sensing out there and the world itself, and even, it doesn't have any reality?
Well, I could say yes, from one standpoint, but personally I try to stay away from those kind of statements for this reason, because it splits a hole. It tends to split a hole in the mind. It splits it in two. Because when we say that the world isn't real, it is seen that if you just start on a very personal level, like we're just talking about, and we go back to this I, we start to see that that this I has been the only thing that has always been. Everything else has come and gone, manufactured itself out of this one formless I. It's manifested itself. And so we start to see, well, I can't be that because that's always changed. And there's always been this I. And if I was that and it changed, which means change means it died, and yet I'm still here. My thought patterns, my feeling pattern, everything has died, and yet I'm still here. So in that one sense, in this sense, this is why it's said like the world is illusion, the world isn't real. Because without the perceiving, the world doesn't exist. But at the same time, this is the reason I don't just say I don't make a blanket statement that it's not real. Because at the same time that everything that happens, the whole world of human interaction and non-human interaction, the whole world itself, and every thought that'll ever enter your mind and anybody else's mind, also comes from that same source. It's an expression of that source. So, since it's an expression of that source, to say that it's not real doesn't quite hit the mark either. You see what I mean?
Yes.
To say that it is real doesn't quite hit the mark either. It's like saying when you dream at night, well, of course the dream wasn't real, but it was real in the sense that it happened. Right? It happened. So in that sense, it has a reality. So I think when we talk about the self, of course, freedom lies in seeing what the absolute nature of the self actually is. Because then one's free from everything that's coming and going. But once one sees that, then what comes and goes becomes, it moves from being a disaster to being beautiful. Because when it comes, it doesn't mean anything, and when it goes, it's not a disaster. So it becomes beautiful.
And there's nothing personal in it whatsoever, in any way at all. I mean, that's what I'm getting, the main thing that you're saying today, is that it's just totally, absolutely, completely impersonal.
Look back, okay, I could say yes. But also prove it true in your experience. When you go back to what you're calling the self, the formless self, and then you look, say, back on the relative self, everything that ever happened in life. Was it personal?
Not from that point of view.
Not from that point of view. You see what I mean?
No.
It originated from the self. It didn't originate from a false identity. That's the dream, is we think that everything is originating from a false identity. But when we see that everything is originating, including the false identity, that is originating from God or the self, that's a whole different perspective.
So from this point of view, let's say consciousness alone is the doer. Right? There is no personal doer ever.
No, there never was. There never was. For there to be a personal doer, that means there has to be at least two. There has to be consciousness, or there has to be consciousness and something else. God and something else. And the two can't have anything to do with each other.
So my last question is that, just like talking to you, I'm so profoundly aware of a source in peace, and I'm also aware of this ego identity or ego mind just whirling around. Like a thought that just came to mind was, oh God, I'm taking too much attention. In the sense of, okay, that's ego mind, or making me wrong or bad, or so there's like a splitting happening as I'm up here. Like on one level, I look in your eyes and I feel profound peace and the rightness of it all, and then there's this little critic creating self-blame. Elliot, are you up here just because you want more attention, or something?
Yes. So I'm sure nobody else has ever experienced this before. Okay, so this is what we were talking about, isn't it?
Yeah.
That one can actually have an experience of one's true self, and yet there's this human element that keeps wanting to come into a unity and divide it and cause suffering. So this is the living example right here. So you take exactly what the ego's saying, taking too much time and da-da-da-da-da-da. And first thing is, you just accept it. That's the first thing. That, okay, that's what's happening. So you're no longer trying to change anything. And then you look at it from the perspective of self. So just drop right into the perspective of self. And then look at that ego.
From that perspective, there's just total acceptance.
It's even of that experience.
Yes.
Of, am I taking too much time?
It's all accepted.
It's all accepted. And now when it's accepted, because it is accepted, it always was really accepted. Now, does the ego get more anxious or less anxious? The ego itself.
Calms it down.
It calms the ego down. That's it. You see, this is exactly what I mean. When you bring the two together, and without doing anything, because you didn't do anything. I didn't do anything, did we? We didn't do anything. We just came from the perspective of truth. Didn't label anything good, bad, didn't judge it, but just welcomed it in and let the alchemy do its work. In other words, let God do its work. Let that intelligence that created the heavens, the stars, the cosmos, galaxies, and beyond do the work in you. You see what I mean? It's the same intelligence. It's no different.
So let me do one final conclusion with another ego thought that comes in, which is that someday I want to be in a chair like you.
Oh, no, you don't. Everybody who ever thinks that, and I understand that thought,
right.
I understand that sentiment, I understand that feeling. I would love to be powerful enough to beam you in to the last 3.5 years and see if you feel the same way. That's all I can say. As anybody in this room knows, appearances are often deceiving. It's like any other play. There's one thing that happens when everybody's on stage, and there's a whole thing that happens when everybody's off stage. Yeah, you think you get worshipped all the time when you're off stage? Think again. Yes, do you want to come up? Good, please. Can you hear? Is everyone okay hearing? All right, good. Welcome.
So, when you were talking earlier, you were talking about first just being that I, and that simplicity of the I, and then you were talking about feeling it out through the heart, one mind and then one heart. I was able to follow along when you were talking about just being in that simplicity of the I, but then when you started talking about the next thing, about the one heart, I couldn't really follow along with you there, so I'd like some help with that.
Okay. So it becomes easier if you temporarily let go of any emphasis on that sort of pure awareness I. Okay, so you just letting that go, because sometimes if that's our connection, we're a little insecure to let that go.
Yeah, that's been my main focus the whole time, is just focusing on I as pure awareness.
Right.
So
right. So of course,
I sort of mentally oriented myself that way.
Yes, which is fine as a starting place. But see, then we get into often what the mind interprets awareness or conscious to be. See, the mind has a very dry interpretation of what awareness and consciousness is, doesn't it?
Yes.
We've culturally been given that it's something rather
blank.
Right. So when you start to orient yourself internally into that concept, well, guess what we end up with? Right? We end up with the experience that we're conditioned to have, culturally conditioned to have. So we're opening it up. So what is awareness? You can start there. What is awareness? What is awareness? So there's just this quality of just awakeness, right?
Right.
There is that quality, right? So just keep opening it up. So which means let your whole being participate. So you're not just participating from your eyes, whether they're focused out or they're focused in. You're not just participating here. Let your whole being participate. Tell me what awareness feels like. Now to feel it, you're going to have to let go of, right? You're going to have to let go of exclusively focusing on that emptiness as the mind defines emptiness. And just let yourself feel what it's like. Because you are awake. You are awareness, you see? You are awareness. That's what you are. All of you. Not one little aspect that's like pure blank. But your whole being is awareness. So what's the whole experience of awareness right now at this moment? Okay. Yes, and what...
Yes, to be able to define that would be exquisite, no doubt.
To define it isn't important. Do you feel it?
Yeah, I can.
You see, now this we just did it. You see, this is how you want to know how to do it. That's how to do it. That's inquiry. What's the whole being's experience of awareness, of being itself? You see, you open up the whole being.
Okay, so let's go into this just a little further here. What seems to be happening is that there's, to take it out of the aspect of the out of the mind, then there's other things that happen in terms of phenomenologically, body responses, emotional responses,
mm-hmm.
And what seems to me is that when you're talking about the one heart aspect and, just like feeling your way into things, it's non-mental, it's the, like more like subtle energies, emotions,
Yes.
bodily perceptions.
Yes.
And it seems natural to that those things happen, those things naturally happen by themselves. There's a direction, there's an intelligence behind it. So is that along the lines of what you're talking about?
Yes. You see, you feel yourself into, there's no words for it, you see. Because usually most spiritual teachers avoid it by saying it's not a feeling. Being. Just life itself. If you just look out there, you can get it in anybody's eyes. Everybody's eyes have life, whether they think it does or not. You see? And what does that life feel like? You see, it registers in you. Do you feel their life? Do you feel
yeah,
life
it's immediately felt.
Right, now can you call that necessarily an emotion?
No,
or
but it
feeling?
is. But it is there. It's felt. It's perceived.
Now
and it's
you
known.
get what I'm speaking about. Right.
That's talking about that same kind of intelligence operating in all levels of existence.
Of all
and
levels of being. That's right. That's right. That same intelligence, that same self is operating on all levels of being, including the feeling, sensing levels of being. I mean, there's no mistake that that many spiritual teachers in the past up to the present, have talked about bliss and love and peace and happiness and joy and consciousness, right? You see, there's this whole other element of being, consciousness, bliss. Sat Chit Ananda. Being, consciousness, bliss. This is the whole package of the self. It's not just consciousness. Being, consciousness, bliss. And bliss to me is a word, it's too big a word because people's mind goes crazy with this. It should be. Pardon my arrogance. Being, consciousness, serene joy / love. Something like that. You see? But do you you already feel the consciousness part, or the consciousness part. The being part, if you just look out in the room, you just look at the life, just get a feeling for the life that's animating through all these eyes, through all these bodies. You have a feeling of that being, that life?
Yes.
It's the same as in this one, isn't it?
Yes, I perceive it myself, same.
Now when you perceive that, a consciousness and being, does it feel good to take that in, or does it feel bad?
It doesn't really feel good or bad. It's just kind of what it is. There's a unique quality to every perception.
Yes. And what is it like? Is it positive or negative?
Well, I enjoy looking out and seeing everybody's light shining and all
I enjoy.
energies.
So you got it.
It's quite nice.
Right. Being, right? You see the being, you see the life. There's the consciousness, the pure consciousness. And you just said, I enjoy it. Being, consciousness, bliss. It's enjoyable. The underlying nature of existence is enjoy. The underlying, it doesn't mean every experience you ever have is an enjoyable experience, but the underlying nature of existence is enjoyable. Yes, now you get it. So take in your whole self, the whole thing. The being, which is the life, the essence of life. You just look at a flower. You see, you can just, if you don't just look at it, you feel into it. You can just see the life. You can feel the life. Can you feel the life in it?
Oh yeah.
You can't think about it, otherwise it obscures it, but you can just sort of feel. Or if you look at this behind us, it's just, you can feel its expression as just life. That's That's the heart. That's the being part. The beingness is just everywhere you look is just being. It's just being. It's just beingness. Just beingness. And when beingness is perceived through awareness or through consciousness, it's, as you said, it's enjoyable. It's not a bad place to hang out. It's not a bad hole to be.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. I think you got the taste. Yes. Do you want to come up, or would you rather stay?
I don't know.
Come on up then. If you don't know, then I'll try to decide for you. It makes it easier.
What?
Good morning.
Good morning. To pretend you're deciding.
Yes.
That's what I'm getting. I've gotten glimpses of it in the past, and I'm getting it, feeling it from what you're saying here and now, is that there really is, that I am just an experience of is.
That's it.
And that what you've been talking about, like what you were explaining to that gentleman of how to experience that, is just one aspect of it. That when I identify, or whatever you want to call it, when I forget, when I take it personally, and I experience pain, that also is just an experience of I. And it's no different than being happy or the bliss. It's got to be all the same.
Yes.
There can't be any difference in it at all.
Mm-hmm.
So that seeking for enlightenment, I feel like a dog chasing my tail because it all goes around and around, because there is no I again.
There is no I again.
Even if I am searching for enlightenment, that's just the experience of I experiencing me searching for enlightenment.
Yes.
It's just another experience. It's
just
no different from any of them.
No. It's no different than searching for sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yeah.
It's just the biggest possible goodie for the mind.
Or just another one.
It's just another one.
And it's all equal.
It's all equal. Because isness itself isn't seeking anything.
No, it's
having the experience of
having the
seeking.
experience. It's like being
Or
on
not
a roller
seeking.
coaster.
Yes. It's having the experience of, oh, I'm so unenlightened, I have to seek unenlightenment, and then it has the experience that, oh, I'm enlightened, and so I don't have to seek anymore. Of course, neither of which are really true, because is always there. The isness is always was there.
So, in a way, it's just all a big sham.
It's all a big sham. It's all a play. That's why it's called the play of Leela, the play of God, the play of isness. That's what we are as human beings. You see, as a human, you know, this is the play. This is the play.
And when I forget, it's still the play.
Forgetting is the play.
Yeah, that's
remembering is the play. Even when you forget, you don't really forget. Even right in the middle of forgetting, there's knowing, I have forgotten. This is no forgetting. So this is all just a play. So let yourself be lost as well as let yourself be found. Then everything becomes, it all harmonizes, and you start to see that being found isn't the point, and being lost isn't the point. Neither one of them. And then the charge is gone. Because that's the suffering, isn't it? The suffering isn't what's happening, it's the emotional charge behind what's happening.
But wouldn't even the suffering be part of the I's experience?
Yes.
So I still see a dog chasing its tail, even trying to avoid that.
Oh,
to
absolutely.
equal out.
Mhm.
It's like,
Who says you're not supposed to suffer?
yeah. It's like I'm going to experience what I'm going to experience,
Yes.
and it's all part of the what is,
Yes.
and
But the body and mind is going to experience what it's going to experience. The true I is not really experiencing any of that. Or we should say, it's more accurate to say, it's unaffected by the experience of the me. The me is very affected by the experience of me. But the I is unaffected. The isness. At this moment right now, while we're talking, there can be a human element that's affected. It's either clear or unclear or whatever experience that it's having. Good, bad, indifferent. And at the same time, there's something behind it. Do you sense it?
mhm, yes.
You see what I mean? That's allowing that experience to have itself. And the human element is having it, liking it or disliking it. And right behind it is just being. Not discounting the human experience. Not trying to get rid of it. Not trying to transcend it, because it's already transcended. You always have been. So even if the dog is chasing its tail, you're not chasing your tail.
Thank you.
Okay. Great. This is what I mean by allow everything to be. If we just allow everything to be as it is, which means to even allow the human experience to be as it is, it's when we allow it to be without trying to change and judge and even enlighten yourself away from it. Right? But just allow it to be. As soon as you allow it to be, the source of consciousness, the source of I, the source itself, naturally comes into being. And you can always bet, if you sit around and go, I don't see the source, I don't know the source, it's simple, because you're not allowing everything to be as it is. Because if you were, you would. See, it's nice, it's like real clean. You know? It's like throwing an apple in the air. It's going to come down. You see, gravity works in all situations, at all times. It doesn't matter who you are, who I am. There's certain laws. One of the laws is as soon as we allow ourselves to be as we are, even if we're suffering, as soon as we allow ourselves to be as we are, it doesn't mean that that human part is going to stop suffering, but the light behind it becomes obvious. Naturally. Naturally. Because it always was there. Resistance is what clouds everything, is what clouds the self. Resistance is all that clouds it. Okay, enough preaching. We have any more time? Yeah, we have plenty of time. Yes, come on. Now I come to you, okay? Good morning.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Yes.
Can you hold it up here?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So I was sitting over there, and as I was sitting over there, I could feel a real understanding, a real sensing of that I. And I had a sense of it almost, it was sort of here.
Yes.
And then I was thinking of the question that I wanted to ask you. And the question was, well, when I was here last spring, it was about looking for a house and all that went with that. And then finally getting a house, and now it's the wrong house. And will there ever be home?
No.
And then I moved, then I moved as I was sitting there back into that space that was home. And then I thought of, well, in my house, there's all this clutter and mess. And in my life, without going into details, clutter and mess, that's the life experience. And then I backed here, and it just didn't care. It was in that place of, the clutter and mess.
Yes, the clutter and mess.
Yeah, it was just there. So then I had a question for you. And the question was, when I come here, when I sit with you, I have such access to that. And when I leave, I don't. Then what happened is, okay, now I'm going to go from there and I'm going to get up here and I'm going to sit here and talk to you. And then the I that experiences got anxious. And as the I got anxious, there was a receding of here.
Yes.
And that's where I am.
That's where you are.
Yes.
So is the I still, are you still a little anxious?
Yes.
Okay. Good. Anxious is okay. Human beings get anxious. Sometimes when I walk up here to do songs, when I get like halfway through the audience, my heart starts to pound. Sometimes it doesn't. But every once in a while it does. And I'll sit down and my heart will be pounding. We could call that anxiousness. There's energy. Sometimes there's not. There's no energy. Big deal. It's okay. You see, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything about you. It just means you're going to come up. There's energy. Energy comes through the body. So there's energy.
Yeah, I hear that, and then I'm thinking, when I used to sit over there and talk to you, the anxiety didn't come up. So it's the idea of coming from there to here.
Yes, right. So now let anxiety just be. You see, it's okay. Because what tells us that I shouldn't be anxious? This does, doesn't it? The anxiety, energy, God forbid, doesn't fit into my spiritual model. I should float up there, and I should sit down, and nothing it should just all be bliss, right? Now you say this recedes. I say nonsense. Nothing recedes. That you tell me. Just tell me. How true is that?
How true is what?
How true is that whole concept of what a spiritual person or what you should or shouldn't experience in your body as you rise from your chair and you come up to here? What does the truth in you say about that? Is that true that you should or shouldn't experience that?
I should not experience that.
That's what the mind says.
Yes.
What about the truth in you?
Well, that's I'm having trouble
finding.
That's
you're
why
not.
I'm so happy it's here to talk about it, because when I leave, that's,
yes.
Yeah.
Right. So don't even reach back here.
Okay.
It's not. Maybe it moved.
To a new house.
That's right. You can't pinpoint the self. It's very tricky. As soon as you say, well, it's always going to be here, and you try to move back here, well, it says sorry. See? So we just sit here.
Yes. That's where I really want to ask.
So we just sit here. And let everything be okay. Everything is okay. Don't go to the mind and tell me, is everything okay? Access your being. Don't access your mind.
I am.
Is everything okay? Really?
Everything is really okay.
Do you want to take a risk just for fun?
Not yet.
All right. You're the one that wanted to know how to do it out there.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's take a risk.
Yeah.
Let's consciously go into the mind. Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
Where it's not okay.
Uh-huh.
Do you feel it?
Yes.
It's not okay, huh?
Uh-huh.
It's not
I
okay.
feel the anxiety. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
It's gotten okay to be up here.
Right.
But,
But you feel it.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have to think. You think. There's thoughts, huh? It's okay. It's whatever it is. So don't access those. So now, just don't access the mind. Go back and access your whole being, just your whole experience. The mind can be part of that whole experience. Your whole experience. Now tell me how hard it is.
It's effortless.
It's effortless.
Yeah.
So what satsang is for many things. But one of the things, if satsang is actually going to be freeing, which means not just here. I don't particularly care if people are free when they're here. I care if they're free when they're out there. You know?
That's what I...
Yes, otherwise this becomes a drug. So I don't want to create a bunch of drug addicts, satsang addicts. It's all about out there. So when you're out there, the first thing is to not buy into the mind again, to the mind that says out there is different than in here. When you walk out the door, and you just be in the whole of your being, not just one part. Let that part be, though, as it is. Give the human element its place. But experience the wholeness of being, the fullness of being. It's that simple. Usually what we do when someone's not in satsang, they walk out the door or the next day and we feel anxious, we have a difficult moment, and they don't stop. They don't even ask themselves. They don't really go, okay, it's just about the fullness of being. Let me sit down in my kitchen chair and just, what's the fullness of the whole experience of being itself at this moment? Most people I know don't do that. They go, I'm feeling anxious, this isn't like satsang, it's a disaster, when's the next one? Give me a glass of wine, give me the radio, give me anything.
I just want to bring you into my kitchen.
I am in your kitchen.
Energetically.
Absolutely. That's all we are. Is there any difference, really, between us?
As we sit here, there's no difference between us. My sense is that in the kitchen, activating where we're sitting here, that there is a difference in your...
Okay, when you're in the kitchen, you put down 2 chairs. And you put one is the me chair, and one is the Adya chair. And you sit in the me chair, and then you get up and you move to the Adya chair, and you sit down in that chair. And be. And then when you're being, then you ask yourself, well, where is Adya? The body's not here. It must be me. You see what I mean? It must be me.
Say that. I just missed that last bit. Right?
It's me. It's you. You're having your experience. It's all about I. Just look right into that I. Just be that I. Feel your way into the wholeness of the I. Look into the I. See that there's no time, no past, no history, that none of that is happening. Just do it. That's all. Just do it. As soon as you say I, feel what happens in the mind. It wants to say, I am this, I feel good, I don't feel good, I got it, I don't got it. It wants to do that, but if you just say, I, and access the whole experience of being right there, that second, that moment. Don't wait a half an hour for everything to calm down, to get into your meditative mood or whatever. It's immediate. Okay. Thank you. Great.
Yeah.
Great. We've got to stop telling ourselves these lies. We have to stop telling ourselves these lies that somebody has something that I don't have. That's it's sitting in the chair up on the stage so everybody can see gives the appearance somebody has something that I don't see. But it's the appearance, you see, it's just the appearance that consciousness chose for this appearance to be here. Just like consciousness chooses your appearance to be whatever it is you find yourself doing. Whether you find yourself like, I'll find myself driving my car in, an hour or so away from here. And I won't find myself in this appearance here, doing this. This won't be happening. You see what I mean? This appearance will have changed. Just like as soon as you leave, the appearance will become one from the listener to the driver in the car to the whatever it is. The appearances always change. They're always moving. Right? But the appearances aren't that important. They're just going to be what they're going to be. We don't pick our appearances. And heaven help the person who tries to. Right? Who says, I want to be, and then, tries to create it. Don't be fooled by appearances. Look within yourself to that same I, and you see the same I there is the same I here. It's no different. The appearances are different, but the I is no different. It doesn't have past, it doesn't have name, it doesn't have form. Not only here, but there. There is here. Okay, do you want to come up? And then I'll come to you, John K. Yeah, we have time. Good. Good morning. Can you speak up too?
I'll work on it.
Maybe we'll get sound next time.
I think I just got part of what I was going to ask you about. And what I was going to ask you about was in the beginning when you were talking about this sense of I, and you were talking about the one eye and the one heart, and there was just a really strong feeling of love coming from the heart, and after a bit I noticed that, and there was like identifying with that as what this I or I sense is. But there started being noticing that it was more like kind of one of those states I used to get in a lot, that I used to just kind of indulge in and wallow in and think that was it. Mm-hmm. And but just near the end of when you were talking with Rachel, I think I got it. It's not because I go into that state and then it starts going away, and then the sense of awareness starts kind of going, and there starts being kind of, it just starts getting muddy and back
all
into...
states change,
exactly.
Come and go, yes.
So, when you were going over with her again, the I, it's just that instant.
That instant.
It's not what comes after. What comes after might be really nice, but it's just it's the I, it's in that instant.
In that instant, yes.
That awareness.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Cool. Because that's what I was missing. But it's just
and don't pinpoint it. You see, because when we say it's not an experience, it doesn't mean experience doesn't leap out of the I. When you're really resting in the I, the underlying experience, the underlying human experience, not discounting other experiences, but the underlying experience is something that's very positive.
Yeah.
It's better if we just say it's very positive than it's love, it's bliss, it's this. Because positive, it can mean lots of things, right? At one moment, it can be a lot of love. At one moment it can be joy. At one moment it can be peace, serenity, happiness. So something that it tends to be, when we're resting in the depth of being beyond experience, on a human level, it reflects in the human being as an underlying, very positive experience of being. A positive experience that does not discount any other experience, but forms the groundwork.
Okay.
So it's sort of this, we could say, this positiveness. You see what I mean? Not a Pollyanna thing, but it's a goodness, a fullness, a richness that's there. Yeah.
Okay.
But don't ever, as you're intuiting, don't ever identify that positiveness or that richness is going to take one particular form all the time.
Right.
Because it's not.
No. I know.
Thank goodness.
Yeah?
Oh, it's the diversity of richness, right? That's why we say rich. You can have a rich chocolate mousse, a rich whatever. Well, I don't know. What else? What? A rich. Oh, I love cheesecake. Oh. A rich cheesecake. Right? Different flavors, all rich. Lots of flavor, but it's the richness that's under the way. Oh, that's really rich. That's good. It's more like that. That's what bliss means. That underlying richness of existence, fullness of existence.
Okay.
Yeah.
And sometimes when that comes, it's like the whole being just kind of starts just like waking up and just getting, it's like the circuits almost they feel like they're getting close to overloaded.
Mm-hmm.
And then the mind starts worrying, oh, I can't take this for very long. And so, starts shutting things back down.
Yes.
What to do?
That's what you do nothing.
Just let it shut things down.
No. They question the mind. Is it true? Is it actually true? I'm going to blow up with love. I can't take it. Is it true? Well, let me see. Let me take a big risk and just see what happens if I let myself explode. Are you really going to explode? Have you ever exploded? Has it ruined you?
I haven't exploded, and I guess that's another thing is there's wanting to let myself explode, and I don't.
Just let everything be. Don't want.
Yeah.
I know you said let, but
yeah, I hear you.
I hear
I
too.
get it.
Right? Don't want to explode.
Right.
That's not necessary.
Got it.
You see?
Okay.
Because we can become addicted to spiritual explosions too, and they will come occasionally, but they're not the point.
Yeah, there's been a belief that there needs to be an explosion to clear some debris out.
Nonsense. The only debris that needs to be cleared out is that there's an idea that says there needs to be an explosion to clear debris out. That is debris. You see what I mean?
I do.
That's the debris. Without that debris, then what do you need to have happen to be who you are? Without that debris. That debris that says something needs to happen to be who and what I am. Now if you throw that debris out, that garbage out, that says and that anything has to happen to be who I am, what are you left with? Right. Okay. Never underestimate the power of concept. It's tremendous, isn't it? The power of concept is unbelievable. It's more powerful than nuclear explosions. Right? Almost every human being who's ever lived has experienced the power of concept. Of I am this somebody, and right? Power of concept, very, very. So we should always question every single concept that we have about ourselves, about what we need to be what we need to have happen in order to be ourselves, into what we think hasn't happened, what we hope might happen, anything we need to be who we already are. See, all these are just, look in the mind, and it's all this, a layer of concept. And if they're unquestioned, if they're investigated, the concept emotionally is going to lead the drama of your life. You'll emotionally play out the concept. But as soon as they start to be questioned, the concepts die. They're just concepts. John, you want to come up? Great. Good morning.
Good morning.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon. What I wanted to ask about is can people hear? Is this loud? Okay. What I wanted to ask about is the distinction between consciousness and awareness.
Consciousness and awareness. Okay.
Yeah. I have some vague sense of it, but I'd really like to understand what is it? What is each?
Well, when you ask the question, you're going to get the way that I distinguish the two.
Okay.
Because different people distinguish them differently. And some people don't distinguish them at all.
Okay.
Right? Throughout traditions and spiritual teachers and people use these concepts differently. I think in the way that you're talking about it, when many people make a differentiation, which I actually do as well, between consciousness and awareness, is consciousness is that sense when we say I, or I am, that whole sense of being, consciousness, I am, and it registers through our whole being, and it's that sense of I am, knowing that I am, knowingly. Awareness is we could say much more refined, much more subtle. Awareness is that we could say the knowingness of I, or I am. When you say I, and you just experience I, just pure I.
Yeah.
There's the experience. And then there's something. Even awareness is too much. There's a mystery that knows that experience is happening. There's a mystery behind it. Do you feel I?
Sure.
Do you feel I?
Yeah.
Okay, just as pure consciousness, we could say. And the whole experience of being, which is pure consciousness. Now, remove it. That's awareness.
Yeah, there is a subtle way, that the I and the consciousness. Okay. There's a subtle way that the I and the consciousness are things.
Yes.
They're subtle.
Very,
things,
very subtle.
But they're things, and the awareness is not.
Even I is the first projection of a mystery that can't be named, can it?
Yes.
So we can get this palatable sense of I, pure consciousness. Sometimes I'll mix terms up to confuse everybody. Right? But then you get that, and the proof of the ultimate behind it, or around it, or whatever you want to talk about, the proof of the ultimate, or awareness, is the mere fact that when I said, remove it, you can. It's just like blinking your eyes, and it's gone.
And the awareness is not.
Something's not.
Yeah, something.
You are not.
Whatever you call it.
Right, we can't even
not.
call that you, can we? Or me, or I, or that, or self, or it all dies there.
It's like beyond subtle, because subtle
Yes.
means subtle something.
Subtle perception.
Yeah, subtle something, but it's not even that.
That's why we talked about you mentioned the Heart Sutra before you came here, where the Heart Sutra goes through this whole litany. No eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, no consciousness.
Yes.
No
That's what brought it up. That's what
Yes.
brought this up.
Yeah, that's usually piques people's interest. Not even consciousness. And then it keeps going on, which is the part that's very important. No birth, no life, no death, and no end to birth, life, and death. Which means that even though in the ultimate we see that consciousness itself, or I am, is the first projection of that mystery. That's why I don't talk about it very often, because when most people hear me say that, they try to permanently get rid of I. Permanently get rid of consciousness, as if it's the goal.
Right.
It's not the goal. It's a whole. It's all one whole.
So it's paradoxical. There is no for what we're calling the awareness. There is no birth. There is no life. There is no death. There's just there's nothing.
It's beyond
nothing,
being and non-being.
It's nothing that's aware.
Right.
And for the consciousness, there's the involvement with life and birth and death and the whole phenomenal display.
And the transcending of birth, life, and death, because even just the pure consciousness is transcendent of it, at the same time partaking of it, right? The pure I is transcendent of it, and also partaking.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. That helped.
Does that help?
That helped.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you. Yeah. Right. But you understand why I don't talk about it much, because then it becomes another spiritual goal. It's not a goal. It's just something it's just the isness behind the isness. That's all. Because the I, when the body drops, there's not going to be anybody around to feel I. There's only going to be the ultimate. That's all there's going to be. There's not even going to be consciousness sitting around going, oh, I've just died and I'm very unaffected. This is very nice. There's going to be something else. Yeah.